Hello guys, I am back from another video and today we're talking about Deku was a mercenary. So, in the last video Deku, well, this is going to be a short explanation by the way, so short in my opinion, mostly because, well, most of my explanations about last episode, or like any last episodes, they're basically pretty long, so let's just say Izuku met his long-lost sister, which Izuku doesn't know, being Izumi Iruma, and apparently Inko, aka Izuku's real mother, actually remarried to a pretty rich man. So, after they were told to go to the USJ because of a field trip, wait for a second, sorry about that. After they were told to get ready because they're going to be going to the USJ, they made it there, but unfortunately, the League of Villains arrived, including a person from Izuku's past, being Hassan of the Army, which was a former member of the Asana Izawa. The reason why she's called a former member is because when Izuku arrived there, she believed that all people that are outsiders to the Asana Izawa are weaker. And when Izuku arrived telling everybody that he wants to train under them, let's just say she was angry. So, when she tried to kill Izuku, she was banished, and for Izuku, Izuku was basically an honorary member of the Asana Izaba, which he's basically a part of the Brotherhood. But for her, wait for a second again, sorry about that. So, after, the whole thing, apparently she was banished and was called a traitor and never be allowed at the Asana Izaba base ever again. But she now came back and now working for the League of Villains, and she wants revenge on Izuku for making her entire clan betray her. So, when she tried to kill Izuku with her special little power, or Zombania, being Zombania Battalion, which allows her to... Actually, it's just basically Izuku's quirk, but except with guns. So, Izuku, after seeing all of the, bloodshed that she basically caused, Izuku activated his true Zombania. His true Zombania was called Zombania of the Jester, which literally transforms his scabbard into a literal gigantic-ass clown, which has a shadowy-like body, but the face is made out of the actual, face of the scabbard, but also has spikes as claws, which are the golden, spikes on the actual scabbard. So, when Izuku defeated her, well, let's just say Izuku also killed the Nomu, and was getting ready to kill both Shigaraki and Konigiri, but they escaped. So, after that whole thing, Izuku explains everything to the teachers, or should I say teacher, because only Aizawa was there, but Izuku was also told by Aizawa that he won't snitch. So, after doing that, Izuku escorts both, Momo and Jiro home. Izuku basically just gets some good night's sleep. But, unfortunately, this is not the end of the explanation, because I also told you in the last video that we had a little bit of confirmation about the whereabouts of Miss, Inko Iruma. And apparently after, Izumi, coming back from, school, she explains about her whole situation with a boy, being Izuku, and when she said about Izuku's description being a boy with, almost just one green eye and, green hair, let's just say she was, interested, being, her mother, aka Izuku's real mother, aka Inko. After she basically left, after finishing dinner, she basically opens up a curtain and reveals several pictures of, Sakura, aka Izuku's adopted mother, and, these pictures were pretty sketchy. most of the pictures of Sakura are basically have knives embedded in them. And let's just say she has a absolute hatred for her. Like, she wants to bring Izuku back to the point that she will do anything. So, the reason why she's basically like this is because she's felt guilt. So, after that whole thing, she basically goes to sleep. So, that was a pretty long explanation. Jesus Christ. So, anyway, before we actually start the episode, well, apparently I'm going to be going to back to my hometown to get the vaccine. And yes, it's finally time I'm going to get the vaccine. So, I'm not going to be making a video tomorrow because I'm going to be staying at my father's house because apparently the side effects are basically going to be, nauseous. So I'm not going to be making a video tomorrow. So yeah, I'm really sorry, but I'm going to be getting the vaccine. Sorry, not in my control. It's more like my mother. So yeah, so let's talk about what happens next. So, it's finally the weekends where Izuku decides to have a date with his so-called, fiancé, being Jiro. So, Izuku goes to her house as she knocks on the door as she sees Izuku wearing a really casual type of, clothing. And it's not helping that he has pretty tan skin, making him look pretty, HOT. I'm not gonna say hot because every time when I say the word hot, it makes it sound weird. So, even though I just said it right now, let's just ignore that. She says this. Oh, Izuku, you're finally here. As Izuku just says this. Come on, let's go. So, Izuku brings her to his motorcycle as they decide to go to a little restaurant, which is a pretty cute little. Wait for a second. Well, shop filled with like noodles and traditional Japanese dishes. So, Izuku goes there as many of the people that saw Izuku and Jiro thought they were a pretty cute couple. Including some guys were kind of jealous that, Izuku is with her, but after seeing Izuku's like tan skin, they think, oh, he's probably a delinquent, we should not mess with him. So, when Izuku brings her to the little shop, Izuku orders some regular old ramen noodles. As for Jiro, she asks for. Wait for a sec. This thing, it's called shabu shabu, which, uh, in my language, being Filipino, shabu shabu is actually a word for drugs, or at least I think it's in drugs, like the actual word for drugs, because I watched this show back in the day. It was called Provinciano, which is like in the earliest like days of the episodes, it was all about drug dealers and things like that. So they would always call drugs shabu like that. So yeah, and it was like PG-13, that show, and I can't believe my father actually let me watch that. I guess he didn't really know that we were supposed to not watch that. And I was 10 at the time, by the way. I was 10 when I first watched that show. And it kind of made me feel weird inside, seeing all of the nudity. And I guess that's how I got my awakening. God dang it. Anyway, so, Izuku, after, well, seeing what she ordered, Izuku starts digging in. So, after eating, they decide to go to a little karaoke bar where they basically sang some songs and a little bit of more couple things like, going to the mall, buying some stuff for her, and also buying stuff for himself. As after the day, Izuku just tells her this. Hey, Jiro, um, are you actually happy with me, being your fiance? It seems that you don't like me as much as she says this. No, I think you're okay. It doesn't mean that I don't like you or anything. um, I just think you're interesting. Yeah, interesting. As Izuku just says this. Really? So, Jiro, are you, like, as she says this? Yeah, I'm, a V. And if you don't know what is a V, as, like, if you don't know what is a V, then get out. Just get out. Just get out if you're, you know, pretty young. And if you don't know what is a V, then just, get out. And if all of you know what is a V, then I'm also a V, by the way. I don't have a girlfriend or anything like that. I mean, I used to have a girlfriend, but, you know, I just want to forget about that um, girlfriend. Anyway, so after Izuku basically just, you know, hears that from her, she says this. What are you actually talking about then? As Izuku just says this. Well, I actually just want to ask, are you, you know, happy with me, being your fiance? As she says this. Yeah, I'm okay with it. You're really interesting. You're absolutely fun. Your actual ideals and things like that, you aren't like those other people which just wants me to, just want me for their, you know, desires. As he says this. Really. As she says this. Yeah, most of them just wanted the power, and most of them just wanted my my body. It just made me feel all disgusted inside. As Izuku just says this, Jiro. Izuku just hugs her as she says this. Can you please don't, be this close. It feels weird. As Izuku just says this. Come on. After all, I am your fiance. And I think it's better for me to just act like this for a while now. As she says this. Come on, it feels embarrassing. As Izuku just says this. Just a little longer. As she says this. Fine. So, after a extremely long hug, she basically tells him to stop. As Izuku stops. So, after doing that, they go their separate ways. Izuku brings her to her mansion, or her little house, as Izuku leaves. So, the next day, which is Sunday, Izuku decides to go to Momo's house, where Izuku is going to be doing a little, wait first, a little bit of guarding of Momo. So, Izuku gets there, as apparently it's gonna be a party very soon. So, Izuku was told that he was going to be wearing a really, typical like tuxedo and tie. Izuku's going to be like a waiter to her or just a little butler. So, Izuku gets there at nighttime as it's the party where Izuku starts serving food to the guests, pretending to be a butler, but in actuality, he's basically a bodyguard. So, a while has passed as several people, mostly boys, start approaching Momo, mostly because of her power and influence and for her badonkas. And if you don't know what her badonkas are, then take a guess what they are. I will give you a hint. They're meat flaps. God dang it. Anyway, so several of these boys start ogling at her, saying, "Hey, do you have anybody that you like? I mean, I'm after all the best." As several people start fighting for her, but Izuku just seeing that just thought it was just super pathetic. So, she starts going towards Izuku as she says this. All of you just stay away. As Izuku just says this. Momo, what are you doing? As she says this. Well, can you at least act like a bodyguard? After all, you are paid to be a mercenary. As Izuku just says this. Fine. As Izuku just says this. Hey, all of you. Can you please stay back? Besides, she seems to be uncomfortable. As one of them said this. Whatever, you damn servant. As all of them start leaving. As a few girls start coming closer to them, mostly towards Izuku, as they asked if Izuku is, well, single. As Izuku tells them that he already has a fiancée, as some of them start looking around, kind of depressed, as they start going towards other boys of the party. So, when it's almost literally nighttime or midnight, everybody starts leaving. So, Izuku was told by a text from his mother that she's gonna be going home late, so it's better for, well, him to sleep at Momo's. So, after telling the head of the Yajirozu household, being, Momo's father, he accepted it and says that he's gonna be sleeping in the living quarters of the maids. Even though Izuku is a boy and, it's a maids, you know, mostly maids. There's only two butlers in this entire mansion, being the head butler and the vice butler, and they mostly just go home to a different part of the city. And for all of the maids are basically sleeping in the actual thing, being the house or the mansion. So after Izuku was told to basically just sleep in the maid's quarters, Izuku gets some pillows and some blankets to start getting ready to get some sleep. Izuku puts on a futon, as Izuku goes to sleep. So, Izuku kind of felt uncomfortable, even though most of his missions were basically just assassinations. Mostly to really powerful people, like for example, women or men. And most of the time, Izuku has to camp down and go to sleep near the actual target. And it felt uncomfortable for some reason. Mostly because Izuku is basically just all over is mostly girls. Girls that are basically looking at him saying, what if we marry him? Mostly because of his, status in the actual, underworld. Because after all, he is a mercenary, and the high pay for that is basically more like mountains upon mountains of yen. So, several of these girls started looking at him, being the maids. Most of them were pretty young, maybe like mid, like early, early 19, they're basically 19 to maybe 30 something, 30 5 or something, being the head maid being 30 35, as most of them started looking at Izuku, mostly the young ones. The older ones already had husbands already. As Izuku felt uncomfortable, as Izuku gets a knock at the, door. Izuku opens it and sees Momo. As Momo said this, hey, Izuku, can you sleep with me instead? It feels uncomfortable for, well, you, especially because all of the girls here. So I think it's better for you to just sleep with me. As Izuku just says this, sure. So, Izuku starts packing all of his things and starts going to Momo's room. So, Izuku sleeps on the futon there as she says this. Good night, Izuku. As Izuku just says this. Good night, Momo. So, she basically turns off the the lamp, as it's basically time for them to go to sleep. Izuku kind of felt calm, mostly because he's not surrounded by girls. But Izuku is now just alone with Momo, as Momo almost felt a bit weird. Like she kind of had a crush on Izuku. Though she knows that, you know, actually I'm starting to see a lot of no's. Not no, more like no, as in, something. As she basically knows that, Izuku is, well, has a fiance of being, Jiro's fiance, basically. But she feels something inside her, saying that she should instead try and make Izuku love her instead. As she thinks in her mind that, it sounds bad, but I want to do it, but it's still bad. So, that whole dilemma was basically rectified when it's finally morning, where Izuku started leaving, telling her goodbye as she was, well, all alone. So, after that day, Izuku basically came back home, where it's basically, Monday. So, he starts preparing all of his things quickly as he starts going to school. So, when he's at school, Izuku saw his classmates again. So, it was a normal school day, kind of, because, Heroics class, as they were told to go back to classroom because of a special announcement. And that announcement was a special tournament coming soon, being the, well, sports festival. So, everybody was told that they're going to be training pretty hard because it's going to be the whole sports festival. And with that, they're basically all pumped up, including Ochako, and Jiro and Momo. Izuku doesn't really care about it, but Izuku participates anyway. So, after that whole thing, Izuku started leaving. As for the rest of them, they basically started leaving as well. So, after that, when Izuku came back home, Izuku tells his mother that he was kinda tired, as she says this. Alright, Izuku. Alright, you can sleep now. As, when Izuku goes to his bed, he falls to sleep. So, I hope you liked the video, comment, and subscribe, and I hope to see you guys next time. But before you leave, I'm going to give you your last reminder that I'm not going to be making any videos, mostly because I'm going to be taking the vaccine for, for the C virus. I'm not going to say it because, demonetization. So, and apparently one of my videos has been copyrighted because, music. Anyway, so, apparently, I'm going to be going to my hometown, where I'm going to be taking the vaccine from a certain hospital, which I'm not going to tell because I don't want anybody stalking me. So, after I get my, vaccine, apparently there's going to be some side effects, mostly just nausea and many other things, like, my arm hurting. So, I'm going to be staying at my house, which has no internet. So, I'm not going to be making videos there. So, I think it's better for all of you to basically wait until next day. So, I'm not going to be making videos tomorrow, but I will come back very soon. So, yeah, just be patient, and, well, bye. Goodbye.